How's it going, everyone? This is Delirious Vicious, hitting you guys with another PvP build video. Um, this build that I'm going to be showing you guys is a build that I was running on my Templar for a good portion of the patch. I've really come to enjoy it. It does involve using one of the sets that did take a bit of a nerf this current patch. A lot of players weren't really using it. Some were. I'm one of those players that's been using it because I still enjoy the set, and it still hits pretty hard, and it still provides a lot of damage and healing. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So my Reman's Fury build does consist of course, 5-piece Warrior's Fury, 5-piece Hulking Draugr, 2-piece Bloodspawn. With this, I am running 5 medium, 1 heavy, 1 light, so I can get max Undaunted. It gives me 6% extra resources, which is more damage, more utility, and more survivability. As for my weapon setup, I am running a 2-hand front bar, dual wield back bar. My 2-handed is either going to be a sword or a maul, depends on the fights that I'm getting. For this build, I am mostly using a sword. For my back bar weapons, I am running sword axe. My sword being Nirnhoned and my axe being defended, so I can get a little bit more defense when I'm on my back bar. The axe does give me a bit of a bleed, and I am running a double dot poison. It could be a double dot poison, or it can be a drain health poison. That's really up to you. That's up for your preference. As for my traits with my character, I am running an Imperial with the Warrior Mundus Stone, and for my food buff, I am running Artaeum Takeaway Broth. However, you can run Dubious or whatever else you have on hand. That's really up to your preference here. But overall, unbuffed, as you can see, I have pretty solid stats. The one thing I may be lacking is a little bit of crit, but I think the damage on its own, and being a Stamp Templar, it mitigates it a little bit. Now let's move on to my champion point allocation. For my CP, I try to be as balanced as I possibly can with my CP. The thing with being 810 is I can spread out quite a bit. So we're gonna start off here with the Steed Stone. I am running 55 in Resistant with 66 in Ironclad. With 55 in Resistant, I have a lot of crit resistance, so whenever I do take critical damage, it gets mitigated by quite a bit. 66 in Ironclad does give me 22% mitigation for direct damage. The thing with dots getting nerfed, the direct damage mitigation is more appealing to me right now than the dot damage mitigation. With the lady here, I am running 49 Elemental Defender along with 49 in Hardy, so it's 11% mitigation for both magic-based damage and physical-based damage. I do have 51 points in Thick Skin, which gives me 19% resistances for damage over time. As I said, dots did get nerfed, however, I still want to have some decent mitigation for that. Now let's move on to the tower under the green section. So I do have 39 points in Sprinter, which makes my sprinting a lot cheaper. It's really good for kiting and mobility. More importantly, I do have 51 in Warlord, which makes my stun breaking a lot cheaper, and that can really come in handy when fighting outnumbered. Moving on to the Lover, I do have 64 points in the Mooncalf, which gives me 13% extra stam recovery. I do have 56 points in Tenacity, which gives me a 12% bonus to any resource recovery that I get from my heavy attacks. So, this gives me 120 points, which also lets me take advantage of the Windrunner CP perk, which gives me a 2% additional movement speed, mounted and on foot. It does also increase my Magicka and health recovery by 10% when I'm sprinting, so if I'm running stuff like Troll King, or if I'm using Repentance, it stacks with that and lets me recover more health and more Magicka, which is really good for utility and sustain. Now with the Shadow, I am running 44 points in the Tumbling, which makes my roll dodge 17% cheaper. I also do have some points into Shadow Ward, 16 to be exact. It gives me a 7% cost reduction of blocking, which is good for when I'm tap blocking or just blocking in general. Instead of roll dodging, sometimes I do block attacks, range attacks, snipes, what have you. So that cost reduction really goes a long way. towards my survivability for my build. Now moving on to the mage section for my CP allocation. I do not have any points into the apprentice, so we're going to move on to the Atronak. I do have 66 points into Master at Arms. The big reason why is to make my burst even stronger. But not just that, biting jabs is now affected by Master at Arms and not Thaumaturge. So I'll have to invest as many points into Thaumaturge as I did last patch. Not just that, I do put points into Physical Weapon Expert. This makes my light and heavy attack weaving a lot more effective because it hits harder. It's not rounded down in this one because I still need to make an adjustment. However, I am planning on having it be 24%, either 23 flat or 24% flat for Physical Weapon Expert. Either way, you know, I get a lot more damage from my weaves because of that CP allocation. I also have 11 points in Shattering Blows, which gives me extra damage against shielded opponents. It really comes in handy when I'm fighting players using shields, most notably Magicka sorcerers, or even Stamina Magickas that use Igneous Shield and the like. But the big reason why I have the point allocation the way I have it here is mostly so I can unlock Tactician, which makes it where whenever I roll dodge an attack, I do set my target off balance, which allows me to take advantage of the next thing that we're going to talk about right now, which is the ritual. As I mentioned, the dots to get a bit of a nerf, and jabs no longer goes off of Thaumaturge modifier. So I did tone down the amount of points I have in Thaumaturge from what I had last patch to 44, which is still pretty respectable. It does amplify my damage over time a little bit, especially my Dawnbreaker most importantly. So 17% is still pretty good. It did let me put points back into Precise Strikes. Last patch I had 40 points, which only gave me 16% extra crit damage and heals. Now I have 56, which gives me 20. I do still have 49 points into Mighty, which gives me an 11% increase in all my physical damage, which is pretty much all my attacks because I am a Stam Templar. I do have one off point into Piercing just so I can kind of fill it in. But I do take advantage of Opportunist as well as Exploiter. The thing with Opportunist is whenever I interrupt someone, so if I bash someone as they're rezzing or a max orc that's hard casting, they do take 15% additional damage. And then not just that, I do also take advantage of Exploiter. The thing with Exploiter is whenever a target's off balance, they take 10% more damage. So 15 plus 10, you do the math, ladies and gentlemen, that's 25% additional damage that I can inflict on my target. Because if you bash them, it sets them off balance, it stuns them, and you take advantage of Opportunist. So it's just a lot of damage coming out overall, thanks to the CP allocation. Also, I do have a little bit of extra weapon crit because of Perfect Strike. The big one here, though, is Last Stand. So the thing with Last Stand is, whenever I do hit 20% health, it does give me major heroism, which allows me to get a lot of ultimate to either do two things, either to drop a healing or a defensive ult that can keep me alive longer, or I can gamble. I could take a gamble and drop a Dawnbreaker, drop Berserker Strike, or what have you, drop a more offensive ult and see if I can get some kills, or maybe even turn the fight around. Either way, Last Stand's a pretty useful perk for champion points. So I have 150 under Ritual and then 120 under the Atronak. Overall, it's all my points. It's how I have my CP. How you have your CP allocated, it's honestly up to you. It's your preference, but this is how I would have it set up for my Stam Templar. Alright, so now we're going to cover my bar setup for my front and back bars. Starting with my front bar, I am running Rally. Rally is still pretty good skill because of the changes that were made last patch. It does give you minor endurance, which increases your stam recovery by 10%. It no longer gives you a heal over time, but it does give you a burst heal. the burst heal is actually really strong. I personally thought that removing the heal over time would kill the skill. It really didn't. I'm actually a big fan of the change now because the burst heal is really strong. Really has it really has helped me stay alive in a lot of crazy fights and a lot of really bad situations. Um, Now for my second ability, I am running biting jabs. Biting jabs it did get changed a little bit. It now goes off of direct damage under champion point allocation. Not just that, they removed the 70% snare on the last attack. Now they have it where it's a 40% snare every time you land one of your jabs. So first jab, if it lands, is a 40% snare. And I'm a big fan of that because it gets laggy in PvP, especially in Cyrodiil. So getting that one jab can really make a big difference in a fight. It still gives you major savagery, which increases your weapon crit by about 10%. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I am a Stamp Templar, so I have low crit because of this build. I have 26.5%, but with major savagery, I get 36. I'm gonna show you guys here in a second. But I get some decent crit thanks to biting jabs itself. It's dependable, spammable if you really know how to use it. Um, Now moving on with my third ability, I am running Executioner. I am a firm believer in having an Executioner, especially when you're fighting a lot of tanky players nowadays. Even in this patch, there's still players that like to run around in heavy armor. It's only been a couple days in the patch, so I don't know, that might change. But, for the last year that I've been really getting into PvP, I've always ran an Executioner of some sort, so I'm a big advocate for having it. Not just that, it did get buffed. Instead of doing 360% more damage, it's 400%, so it's still pretty good. It's a pretty good skill to have in general. Um, Now with my CC, I am running Binding Javelin. It did get a bit of a buff this patch because it does ignore your target's resistances. It no longer knocks back like it did way back in the day, but it's still a very dependable CC. It's not too expensive. It hits, it has a respectable tooltip, and again, as I mentioned, it does ignore resistances, so it's a very dependable stun overall. Now with Power Delight, I am running Power Delight again this patch. The big thing that they changed with Power Delight is that it can crit now. As they said in the forums, boom baby. It does also hit your target with minor fracture, which makes your target squishier, and there's plenty of benefit in that. But a big thing that it does proc the Prism passive under Dawn's Wrath, which gives you 6 ultimate. So it can help you generate ultimate if you need to line up your burst when solo play, or if you need to do an ult up in a group. Power Light's it's very handy. It doesn't proc off of group damage anymore, it's now just user damage. But with this build, you do a lot of damage, so you honestly won't see much of a difference in its performance, other than the fact that it is going to crit now. So overall, I really like the change that they did to Power Delight. It's a pretty good change. As for my front bar ultimate, I am running Dawnbreaker Smiting. Some people still like running DB. I personally like running DB in groups, and so even in solo. However, you could run Berserker Rage or the other morph. That's honestly your preference. I like to run either or. It just depends on the scenario and my mood. Sometimes, I'll want to do a little vibe check and hit them with Berserker Rage. Or other times I just want to hit them with Dawnbreaker so I can just ramp up my Power Delight. Now as for my back bar setup, it's pretty basic. I am running Restoring Focus. The thing with Restoring Focus, it is my defensive buff. It also gives me a little bit of stamina, which really comes in handy with Templar's sustain, because our sustain is pretty lackluster compared to a lot of the other classes. But with the change that they made a couple patches ago with it, it's a pretty dependable skill. It's very useful. I am also running Extended Ritual. Extended Ritual is my purge. I use it for utility as well as healing, because it does go off of max stats now. So the healing over time from Extended Ritual is actually really strong. It does also give me Minor Mending, which gives me 8% of additional healing, which it makes my vigor stronger. And speaking of which, I do have vigor. I personally think that every stamina class should have vigor. in their bar setup, maybe with a couple exceptions. Um, I am also running Blood Craze. Blood Craze being my dot. It applies a dot on my target, but also heals me for a portion of the damage done. It did get nerfed a little bit, but it's still a pretty solid skill to have in your setup, especially because of the healing that it does provide. And I also am running Shuffle. The thing with Shuffle is it removes snares and it gives me snare immunity and immobilization immunity for 1 second of every single medium armor piece that I'm wearing. And since I'm running 5 medium, I get 5 seconds of snare and immobilization immunity. So overall, it's a really solid skill to have. As my back bar ultimate, I am running Remembrance, but you could run another Dawnbreaker, or you could run the dual wield ultimate or barrier. That's really up to your preference. But I personally like running Remembrance. As you can see here, ladies and gentlemen, when my build is fully buffed, I can hit 5.2k weapon damage. I do also have 37k max stam. I do run triglyphs on my helmet, my chest, and my legs. And then everything else is stamina. I have enough Magicka to handle my utility with, so I just try to keep it that way. I don't need too much Magicka unless I'm running something like Toppling Charge or what have you. With my defensive stats as well, as you can see with Blood Spawn, I am hitting 31k spell resistance as well as 28k physical resistance. So all in all, the damage is pretty good. My stam recovery is pretty decent. All in all, this build has decent sustain, great damage, great healing, and good defense for a dual wield build. All in all, I was trying to release a video for a Templar build that doesn't revolve around the Moon Acolyte or any of the other sets that are coming out this patch. There's a lot of sets out there that are still very usable, and Warrior's Fury is honestly one of them. Hulking Dragon too, despite how old that set could be. But overall, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys um, learned something from this, whether it be something big or something small. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to comment down below. And again, I hope you guys enjoy my content. And if you really do, like and subscribe to my channel. Every like and subscribe really matters, as my channel is still growing and as I am still pushing out content. I would like to see you guys on my journey to growing into a bigger channel, because I'm not going anywhere and I'm going to keep posting content. I have 2 more build videos that are on the way, and I am looking forward to showing you guys these future videos. With that being said, thanks for watching, and until next time.